waiting.
All right, as the Deputy Mayor of Town of Edson, I call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order. May I have a motion that the agenda for May 14th, 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted as presented? Councillor Chenard will make that motion. All in favor? Passed. May I have a motion that the minutes of the April 23rd, 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted as presented? Councillor Bevan makes that motion. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Motion passed. There's no delegations. Reports from staff. We have an asset management plan from corporate services. Welcome, Ms. Bittner.
Good afternoon. So today we will be presenting an overview of the asset management plan that we initiated the sort of work on that back in 2016. Today's plan will be a snapshot in time as at December of 2017. We were lucky enough to have Mr. Chris van der Heijden from Public Sector Digest come and actually give a presentation for you. He happened to be in Alberta visiting another municipality at this time, so we kind of nabbed him and asked if he could come and just give you a quick overview. So I'll have you come up, Chris.
Thanks, sir.
And Val, if you want to take it. I'm bringing Val in as well. She was the one that has spearheaded this and probably knows it better than than I do. So, okay, Chris.
Well, thanks for having me. A little bit of background about myself. So I come from southwestern Ontario. I worked in municipal government for many years in a few different roles. I worked in corporate services, GIS, public works engineering and design, and then my last role at Oxford County was asset management coordinator for the county and all lower tier municipalities, maintaining all their infrastructure data and integrity and so on. So a lot of experience in municipal government. I understand all of the issues that municipalities have throughout Canada. It's not just here or in Ontario, it's everywhere. So I've been with PSD now for 3 years. I've been working with municipalities throughout Canada on asset management program development and asset management plans. Today it's just a high-level overview of the asset management plan that was developed for the town of Edson. Again, I'll stress that there's many assumptions made through this asset management plan. There's been a lot of good progress made through the development of the asset management program, and there's still some more work to be done. So again, as Sarah said, it is a snapshot in time. There will be definitely more refinements going forward in the future, but this is just a snapshot of where you are today based on our analysis and our findings. So a little bit about Public Sector Digest. We have 3 divisions. Research, so the Public Sector Digest itself, so that's quarterly publications on municipal government topics, paper reports, applied research, and also grant services. Consulting division, which I work for, we do asset management training, asset management program development, and obviously asset management plans for municipalities, among a few of the other services that we provide. As far as the software side of things, we have enterprise asset management software, capital planning analysis software, and also enterprise budget management software and work order management software. In 2016, as Sarah said earlier, we began this journey through the asset management roadmap. And there's 8 key components of the asset management roadmap. So from start to finish, we started with the State of Maturity Report, which is an in-depth analysis of the state of your asset management practices within the town of Edson. And this is rated amongst many municipalities throughout Canada. We have a rating system that we do a report card on, which is encompassed within that asset management plan that you have in front of you. Hopefully you've had a chance to review it. I know it's long, it's lengthy. We also developed an asset management policy for the town of Edson throughout the process. We went through condition assessment guidelines and data collection protocols, which is just guidance on how to assess the condition of your assets internally, and also good information and language to use to be able to create your own RFPs to put out the tender. Also data capture strategies, how to capture good data against your assets, which data is needed, which information will lead us to better decision making in the future. Risk and criticality models, trying to define where your risk lies within your infrastructure portfolio. Lifecycle management strategies, so in other words, applying the right event to the right asset at the right time to the extend the life of the asset also at the lowest possible cost of ownership. And then through the final phase of the roadmap, we now develop the AMP, so we look at financial strategies, levels of service framework, and also the asset management plan. And that's what we're talking about today. So the 2018 AMP outlines the state of your existing infrastructure and the town's financial capacity to be able to be sustainable in the future, and maybe to become fully funded sometime in the near future or long term. On this slide here, we look at the total asset replacement cost of your portfolio. Your core infrastructure assets make up about 80% of all of your capital, worth about $425 million. And again, many of these replacement costs that you see today are through the asset management program development. We've leveraged replacement costs through Dowit at the time. But there's also assumptions made on inflationary measures, using CPI tables to inflate historical values. So not completely accurate. There's still more work to be done, but this is a good snapshot of your infrastructure portfolio today. If we break that down into what does that equal for each and every individual household within the town of Edson, that's about $136,000 of infrastructure stock that they have a stake in. So their taxes pay for the services and the infrastructure that supports your community and also supports the tax dollars that they're paying and their rates. And you can see that sanitary sewer makes up a good chunk of that next to the road network. When we look at the state of the infrastructure as far as the condition or how your infrastructure is performing, again, there's assumptions to be made here. There is some assessed condition on some of the infrastructure, and many of your other infrastructure and assets are based off age-based condition, which is not the most accurate way to determine whether your assets are performing very well or not. So again, these are based on a combination of assessed condition, which I'm going to say is probably about 20-25% of your infrastructure has good assessed condition. The rest is based off age. So a good snapshot. If we look at the two different scenarios when we look at how to manage your assets. So scenario one is end-of-life replacement. So if you're to do nothing to our assets and just run it to failure and then replace the asset at the end of life. Scenario two is applying life cycle strategies. Again, I talked about that earlier, applying the right treatment or the right event to the right asset at the right time at the lowest possible cost of ownership, also extending the life of the asset. And for this asset management program, the infrastructure asset category that we worked with for life cycle strategies was your road network. At the time, there wasn't sufficient information and data to support life cycle strategies for sanitary, water, and storm. So roads was the infrastructure category that we tackled under the program. And in the future, obviously, hopefully, we recommend that you move forward with life cycle strategies for your other core infrastructure asset classes as well. If we do a scenario comparison, end-of-life replacement versus life cycle activities. If you look at your tax-funded assets, your annual capital requirement for end-of-life is $8,200,000 approximately. Annual capital requirements with life cycle strategies is about $7 million. A cost benefit just on the road network alone of $1 million a year. Now, again, there's assumptions to be made, but it is proven time and time again that applying life cycle strategies of managing your assets is the best way to get the best bang out of your public dollar and extending the life of your assets. Rate-funded assets did not change, obviously, because we did not implement life cycle strategies at this time for your underground infrastructure, for your sanitary, your water, and your storm. Excuse me, I've been talking a lot this week at the conference. Annual capital requirement and infrastructure deficit. So through the analysis, the information that was gathered throughout the asset management program, it was determined that your annual capital requirements for the life cycle for tax-funded assets, $7 million. Funding available was a little over $2 million. Annual capital deficit for your tax-funded assets of $5 million on an annual basis. Again, these are based on a lot of assumptions. When I go back to saying that we have assessed condition on some assets, if you were to get good assessed condition on your core infrastructure assets, you'll see that greatly change. If you read through the asset management plan, PSD undertook a study with 93 municipalities through Ontario, and we compared bridges, culverts, and road network data. And if we were to simply look at age-based condition versus assessed condition, age-based condition indicated that the infrastructure was much worse shape than the actual assessments. 45% of the assets, I do believe, were in very good condition or good condition. With assessed condition, or sorry, opposite way around. I'd have to go back and look at it, sorry. But there was a huge difference between assessed condition and age-based condition. So again, highly recommended that continue with your assessment program on your core infrastructure assets. Forecasted capital requirements. If we look at your full infrastructure portfolio today to become sustainable and fully funded, you're looking at $10.5 million approximately to be fully funded for all of your infrastructure and assets today. And again, a lot of assumptions were made. This needs to be taken with a grain of salt because there's still work to be done. It's a snapshot in time. Financial strategy for tax-funded assets. So one of the recommendations, we have a chief financial analyst that does all the financial strategies for all asset management plans for all of our clients throughout Canada. And he looks at the most optimal way of becoming fully funded. So in this case, it was a 20-year plan. Tax rate change over 20 years was 43.1%, which equals 2.2% increase on taxes on a yearly basis. Now, again, there's still lots of information and data that needs to be collected to be able to get a true indication of what the impacts will be. But going forward, it's highly recommended that you implement some sort of tax increase to start offsetting that deficit. I think in the future, over the next 4 or 5 years, as you refine your asset management program and you move in towards developing your next AMP, as long as your asset management program proceeds forward, you'll see those numbers change. It'll be a better snapshot in time in 5 years down the road, but you need to get there first. You need to get that information and data, assess condition, and so on. Financial strategy for rate-funded assets. So again, you don't have very good assessed condition on your underground infrastructure. So it's based off age-based conditions. So it's showing that a lot of your infrastructure is maybe in poorer shape than what it really is. It's probably performing at a better standard, but we don't know that for sure. We're looking at, on a 20-year basis for your sanitary network, 85.8% increase over 20 years, which is a 4.3% on an annual basis. When we look at the water network, 41.9% over 20 years, which is a 2.1% increase. Now we'll just kind of look at a high-level review of the infrastructure report card. Again, this is a very high-level report card. Lots of assumptions made here, and it's based off of what your deficits are for your asset categories, the condition of the assets, and information available. And if we look at the road network, the road network has assessed condition, and there's a good indication of assessed condition gives you the true picture of how your assets are performing. So your health of your road network came in at a B. So it's not too bad. It's in pretty good shape. Current financial capacity was rated an F. It's way underfunded. And the overall grade was a D. 83% of the town's road network is in very good or good condition. That's much better than what I see throughout Canada with other municipalities. So your road network is actually in fairly good condition. When it
Can you
comes
say
to
that louder, please?
Yes. As shocking as this may seem, it's very comparable to what I see with municipalities throughout Canada. It's something that every municipality is dealing with at some level. Some worse, some better, but we're all in the same boat. Bridges and culverts, well, you don't have a huge bridge and culvert inventory. You do have some. Asset health was rated at a C, but that's based on age-based condition only. I don't think we had assessed condition for your culverts and your bridges at that time. Current financial capacity was rated an F, obviously underfunded. Annual deficit of $194,000, and that's based on the information that we have and the replacement costs that we have. Water network again, asset health was rated a B. Current financial capacity an F, and overall C. And I won't walk through it all. I think everybody's getting the true gist of what this is giving you, is what he's giving you as an assessment value. And just to sum this up, through the asset management program development, These are some of the key recommendations that we're bringing forward as part of the improvement of your asset management program, but also, bringing you into that next AMP, possibly in 5 years, development of your next AMP. And first and foremost, develop a formal condition assessment program. You really need to invest in understanding how your core infrastructure assets are performing. It'll give you a better indication of what your financial capacity is, and also what your annual requirements will be going forward. So again, based on that study that we have in the asset management plan, it's proven time and time again that infrastructure is actually performing better than what it's saying when we look at the age-based condition. Also adopting a long-term financial strategy. What that might be, obviously there will be some tweaks and things, revisions made over time, but it's highly recommended that you look at the long term and not just the short term. Your team here, I've worked with Val and Sarah and Dawa and Jeff and a bunch of others here. They've done a tremendous amount of work over the last 3-4 years getting information and data. For a good example was the road network. When we started this program, there was 144 assets in your registry. Today you have around 560 individual road segments, asset road segments. You can manage those assets much better. When we look at it from a performance and an operational standard and a rehabilitation standpoint, breaking those assets out and segmenting out your inventory gives you the flexibility to be able to maintain and address your needs better in the future and be able to project what your needs will be. We also recommend merging your existing financial data to your asset management data. So within the asset management software, there's 2 data sets. There's one for financial reporting, there's also one for asset management. But to truly get everybody on the same page and sort of not break down the silos, but connect all these different silos, it's good to merge that information and data and centralize it. So everybody's speaking the same language and using the same data to make those decisions. Endorse structured change management practices. So being able to adapt to technology, change in resources, change in infrastructure, you need to be able to adapt to that. And that's endorsing a structured change management process or practice is one key step of moving that forward. Continue asset management training and education. And that is not just for field staff, for senior management team. I encourage council members to actually understand asset management, not just from a financial perspective, but the everyday asset management challenges that your field staff have, your senior management team, and your engineering staff to undertake. There's many good resources out there. There's webinars, there's free material that the government puts out that you can simply read and make yourself more aware of holistically what asset management is. The benefits realized for good asset management practices, and some of you are probably already aware of this, better alignment between finance and engineering. The MP will be a catalyst of conversation. So again, it generates ideas. This is a snapshot in time, but it gets that thought process moving forward. Changing philosophies and starting innovations for better management practices. And also a review of asset management practices and policies over time to better align with achievable and sustainable goals. So on periodically revisiting, looking at your policies, update your policies, your asset management plans, and everything that drives your asset management program going forward. Now we're going to give you a little bit of a demonstration of what we've been working on outside of the asset management program development. It's how we've built into the software program. It's going to give the flexibility for your staff, your senior management team. So when you ask questions about infrastructure projects and what are we talking about, we now put a mapping system in place that links back to your inventory. So what you're looking on a map is exactly what they're looking at in their database, financial database and asset management database. So you're getting a true snapshot of what they're dealing with. If I just pop out. So this is your GIS viewer in the citywide asset management software. So we've managed to get your most recent aerial photography. We've loaded that in as your backdrop. So you can see here, this is your town as of 2017. We've focused on core infrastructure assets to date. So if we look at the road network, so here's your road network to date. It's the new inventory, it's segmented block by block, the way your operational team would use this information. If we take a little closer look, we can zoom in. The streets are labeled. We can see within reference to your aerial photography where these streets are located. Your alleys are also incorporated into this data set. So real-time view, your team can draw maps, they can print off maps for council presentations, for planning presentations, and so on. The key importance is that when I talk about assessment data, so I'm going to turn off this layer, and I talked about assessed condition versus age-based condition. We do have good assessed condition on your road network, so I'm going to visually show you what that looks like in your road network. So if I zoom back out and take a look, I'm going to look at, first of all, let's look at age-based condition. So looking at this map, red is very poor, orange is poor, yellow is fair condition, blue is good condition, and green is very good condition. So when we look at just age-based condition, this is what would be projected as your condition of your whole portfolio. If I switch this over to your assessed condition, you can see your infrastructure is in much better shape looking at assessed condition. So this just reinforces that assessed condition on core infrastructure is key. It'll help you project your budgets and what your annual requirements will be going forward in the future. So again, we can see, yes, we do understand, and they've confirmed that yes, some of these streets that are in red are ones that need to be addressed. But we can see that where maybe there are some other ones coming forward in the future. The big message is here, when you look at those red assets or red road networks, they're in very poor condition. Those may be assets that they're beyond the point where we can rehabilitate them. So the only solution we have is to fully reconstruct. But the ones in orange, those are the ones that they may be candidate for a rehabilitation at much lesser cost, but then can extend the life of that asset another 15 years. So it just gives you that information to help prioritize your projects based on where you're getting the best bang for your public dollar. Again, I can then also look at projected conditions. So this is assessed condition was when it was assessed back in 2016, I do believe.
Can't remember what year it was.
Assessed data?
Oh, 17, yeah.
2017. So if I look at projected condition, now it's going to project what our condition is today. So we just looked at the assessment information from 2017. If I change it to projected condition, you can see that some of the assets have now moved from good to fair condition, and maybe one or two assets have moved from fair to poor condition. So in other words, the system can then, your asset management system can project what the condition of these assets will be in the future. We can also map out where your risk lies within your portfolio. So this is a map of risk. So again, assets in red are high risk. And how risk was defined was based on social factors, design class of road, sub-design class of road, replacement cost or economic impacts of each one of those road segments based on current replacement values and so on. So there's a lot of methodology behind that. But again, you can map that. Risk directly relates back to the levels of service you're providing to your community. Mitigating your risk, keeping your assets in an acceptable level of condition also delivers that levels of service that the public expects for their tax dollars. So just good ways to visualize and send that message. And I won't get into the other ones. Along with the roads, so if I shrink that, we talked about alleys. We also have your new storm main inventory associated here. So if I turn off your roads and I turn on your storm inventory. So we've taken leveraged GIS and CAD data and we've now segmented out your storm inventory. So now a better understanding, what do we have for storm infrastructure underground? Where it is, what it is. The GIS now links to your asset management software. So when you're looking at a map, council, on your GIS viewer or your mapping viewer that you're looking at the same information that they're looking at in their asset management registry. So when you see that asset ID, that's one individual storm main underground. So you have asset ID 133. If we scroll over, there's asset ID 215 and so on. Every asset has its own unique identifier because every asset, storm asset, underground, storm pipe, may be a different diameter, maybe different material type, and maybe in a different condition. You can't blanket statement your whole infrastructure portfolio and say that, oh, it's a storm main, so it's all in very good condition or very poor condition. We've also added storm outfalls and storm leads. So not only where your storm mains are, where are the leads that lead to your catch basins that funnel that storm water through your drainage system and out into your natural outfalls and municipal drainage. We've also incorporated the water mains. So we have a complete infrastructure asset portfolio of water mains, 100% linked to your GIS graphics back to your asset management inventory. So again, with your core infrastructure assets, you're getting closer to speaking the same language. Everybody's speaking about the same asset, about the same infrastructure. And also the sanitary mains. And again, you'll notice they all have their own unique IDs. So if you're looking at a storm main or a water main or a sanitary main, they're all identified and all linked back to your asset management registry. So a huge success and a huge move forward in your asset management program. One of the key recommendations for this program, now that you have your core linear infrastructure identified and mapped, there is a lot of good data information for your components of those systems. So your sanitary manholes, storm manholes, valves, meters, hydrants, and so on. Linking all that information now into that linear infrastructure. I highly recommend to keep moving this project forward because it's going to be nothing but benefits. It'll be nothing but a benefit to the whole organization going forward in the future. With that, that's the end of the high-level presentation of the AMP and the GIS mapping linking software, the project that we're working on. Now I'll just open it up to questions. And now we can take off my glasses and see everyone.
Excellent, thank you very much. Lots to consider. Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair. I see you had on there alleyways and that.
Mhm.
How does that affect us? Because I know we got a lot of alleys here, and there is some sewers in the back of the alley, the storm sewers and that get plugged off or broken down. And our alleys are actually in terrible shape until we get out to fix them. They're gravel, they're not paved, some are paved.
Mhm.
So how does that affect us?
Well, not only the road segments are attached to your infrastructure, any infrastructure that's located within your alleyways also is linked to an asset ID or a road seg ID. And I'm glad you asked that question because now I'm going to show you what this project is giving your operational team and how this can also give you better information on mapping. So in the process, we've linked a road segment ID to all the infrastructure in this project associated with that individual road segment. So if I were to go to, and this is just the asset management software, oh, I've already got one listed here. So you can see here I did a query on road seg 221. We know within that road segment you have the road itself, three sanitary mains and a water main located within that road segment. When these replacement costs, when you have true replacement costs updated in all your infrastructure, your team will then be able to look at that and say, well, there's the total cost of that road segment if we look at a full reconstruction of that project. So it's giving them leveraging a lot of information and pooling a lot of resources together. It's going to make their workflow that much more efficient and more accurate reporting. So with that, if you want to look at a capital project on road segment 221, you could then bring it back to the map. The map will highlight it on the map and zoom in where that road is actually located. So again, it's the power of information. All the data they've collected over the last 3 years, and there's more work to be done, it leads you better and aligns with good asset management practice or best practice, but it also allows you the flexibility to do just what we were just talking about. Looking at your full infrastructure portfolio rather than just a road network or a sanitary main or a sewer main.
I like this better because when we go out and we have a road rehab or we have to water sewer and then we repave and stuff like this and that, it brings it up there better for not only us to understand, but our residents would be able to see exactly what is going on and how we're keeping up with putting $2 or $3 or $5 million a year into our road repairs and everything else in the sewer and water. So it's a nice way of going. It's a better way of mapping it.
Well, and additionally to that, your team, your asset management coordinator or administrator of the database can easily print you maps. So now that you have this information, it's generating the map right now. Hopefully it loads. Got a glitch.
You didn't try that earlier.
I did try it.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, there it goes. It just took a while. So now they can easily, at a click of a button, generate a map for a council presentation or a meeting. So again, there's the legend that tells you what storm mains, storm outfalls, water mains, and so on. So very powerful, good information to bring to the table.
Just one quick thing, if I may.
Sorry, you already had one. Let's go to Councillor
Actually, following to, there's a lot of information on there. The one thing that I found interesting, when you figured out to keep up to our water, sewer, and roads, we would have to go approximately 6.2% tax increase when you had the numbers of 85. Now, did you factor in what we've been spending as history? Like, some years we're spending 5 and 6 million. So
No, all the analysis for the tax increases were generated by our chief financial analyst.
Correct.
He's been doing this for many years. Again, it's based on a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of information in here that, we just take the information that's available,
Right.
and we utilize that to come up with some budget scenarios. Again, it needs to be taken with a grain of salt, because over the next 5 or 6 years, as you improve your asset management program and get more data, more information, assess condition, those numbers will change. But there's no doubt that there is an infrastructure deficit. But with more good information and data, you'll get a better indication of what really at this snapshot in time, that's what you're looking at based on the information we
I
have.
just want to clarify. We've known for years, like our infrastructure is old because the town is 100 years old. So when you're doing this study, we factor in like an average town in Alberta. When we dig in Edson and we're paving roads, our expenses are great. So we could be doing some sections that are 4 or 5 blocks long, and they're wondering why the cost. So we've been interested over the years of how do we keep up, because we don't want it to fall apart. So when I seen that number 6.2, I thought, wow. This is something to stay on top of, and I totally agree with what you're saying. If we manage it, it shouldn't be that high, but it is interesting numbers. That is a reality that I found shocking.
And this is a scenario that we see all the time, especially in Alberta. You have those boom busts. The oil and gas towns are built overnight. Devon's another good example. How because of that Duck Well #1,
Yeah.
that town was built, but all the infrastructure was built at the same time. So, it's no one's fault that we don't have that money set aside to be able to address those needs coming forward. That's in the past. Now we have to look forward to the future and how are we going to become sustainable. We have to move forward. I can't stress enough that the assessed condition makes a huge impact on what those increases might be. So a better understanding, again, getting assessed condition on your underground infrastructure will help better prioritize which projects need to be addressed first, because it's proven time and time again, although our infrastructure is all the same age, we have pockets of infrastructure in our town 120 years old that's still performing. Our water mains are in good shape, our sanitary mains are in good shape, but we have other areas of town where the water mains, maybe there's acidic soil or stray currents and they're deteriorating at a faster rate. So knowing that information will help you better decide, what those needs will be going forward. And there's definitely peaks and valleys in that.
Okay, Councilor Bear?
Thanks. Through the chair, I've got just 2 questions, 2 separate questions. One to administration is, through the chair, are we able to get a better assessment on the condition of our underground assets? Is that something that we're currently doing or we're planning on in the near future?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's time and cost associated with doing an assessment, but I think you're hearing that from an asset management perspective that there's a great deal of value in knowing the true condition of your assets. And so we'll certainly be putting together a plan based on some of these recommendations on how we think we can make the asset management plan a better tool for both administration and council to use in their decision-making processes.
Okay. And one more through the chair to Mr. Vander Hayden. So Edson is sometimes known as a town with a lot of potholes, and people complain about that, and it's nice to hear that we're not the worst town in the world. So will this help with the reoccurring potholes, or does it just assess the street on its own as the age and the assessed condition, but does it consider the annual cost that we're putting into that street as well?
Yeah, so with this asset management program, we've also started to implement operational impacts. So what is the cost operationally to, not just from a capital standpoint, from an operational perspective, do we have enough in our operational budgets to be able to maintain our infrastructure in good standing? So there's many things that you should be doing to your roadways at the right time to be able to keep it in the best condition possible and prevent further deterioration. So, at this point, they have implemented some strategies into the life cycle strategies of the road network. But again, it'll take a little bit of time to refine it. get some better numbers and quantities and costs to be able to get a true indication. And is that?
I think I would like to add to that as well. I think a good condition road asset can have a pothole in it, so it's not.
For sure.
And so there's other conditioning pieces that indicate condition of asphalt or those types of things, and so but we absolutely make a maintenance effort to take care of potholes, and that leans a little bit more to the operational side, which is I think where Chris was going, is you can add those elements in terms of cost evaluation and something that plays into administration recommending an asset be replaced is when the operational cost of maintenance starts to get higher and higher and higher, replacement becomes the preferable, or rehabilitation, or whichever one of those elements is favorable, becomes preferable based on a number of those conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Zero.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation, and hats off to yourself as well as our staff for all the work they've put into this. I think it's really helpful for us in order to make important infrastructure decisions. I think it also helps us explain to the public when they call us and complain about a certain road segment that we can say, actually, based on the assessment, it's in good shape, or no, it is in poor shape. And I was happy for you to clarify that there needs to be an assessment on that infrastructure. And my question was much similar to Councillor Byers. What's our plan moving forward to get that those assessments done? And I think it speaks to the infrastructure deficit that we have in Canada. We have over a $200 billion infrastructure deficit in this country. Municipalities are only getting 10 cents of every tax dollar to address infrastructure. And I think that's why it's so critically important that we get good funding agreements in place with the provincial government to address this. I look forward to talking about this more with the public. And I guess my question through to administration is, how are we going to provide information to the public, and will the public have access to this system at all, or will we be providing them with some details as to where the core infrastructure needs are in our community?
I'll give some feedback, and then Sarah, if you have anything to add to that, by all means. I think that administratively and this council have clearly made sharing information with the public a priority, and we're happy to allow this information to be shared with the public so they can understand the realities of some of the decisions and the difficult decisions that this group, this body has to make. We don't have a formal process in place yet, although I'm sure Sarah will be working with Steve now that we have this information on how best to make it accessible to the public, at minimum with accessibility on our website and those types of things, as well as maybe some active work to get the message out there that, hey, this is the current state as we know it of our infrastructure. We have identified a date for a coffee with council event coming up, of which the asset management plan is intended to be kind of the main focus and the main topic for discussion there. So hopefully that can maybe jumpstart a public conversation about that reality. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Sarah, or Steve, if you have anything to add. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Well, first, Chris, thank you for the report. It really opens a person's eyes. And this last page, I certainly concur with the mayor here when it's saying a municipality is unprepared to fund. It's very worrisome to me. And through to administration, it says here that council has only a basic to intermediate level of understanding in regards to asset management. So it was shown throughout here that you've had different in-services for people with asset management courses or whatever. I, as a councillor, would really like to be further educated on this, so if you have more, I'd like to be invited, or if you have websites that we can look into to find this out, I would like to do that.
Yeah, there's many resources available, and I'm glad you're interested, because I think it's very important that you understand, the challenges of your departmental staff as well.
Yeah, and I would just add to that we want council to be educated on this. This is why we're doing this, is because the information is for ultimately council to make decisions that we feel are in the best interest of the community, and we'll be happy to provide those opportunities. Council will interact with the asset management plan a little bit different than staff, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't have a strong basic understanding of its principles and its fundamentals, and I think that's what we want to ensure, that council has a really good grasp, and lots of resources out there, and we'd be happy to direct counsel to those that are accessible and or provide some of those opportunities.
Yeah, I just see that you have had in-services with no invitation to council, so I'd like the council to be invited.
If I could add to that, in addition to wanting to understand asset management, it'd be very beneficial if you explored developing a communication plan, asset management communication plan, organization-wide. So how do we communicate asset management from our field staff right up to our senior management to our elected officials? So developing a framework for an asset communication plan is very beneficial. I highly recommend that.
Thank you.
Councillor Curry.
Thank you. I think maybe this is to administration. I'll just put it out there and then see. Just with that recommendation of breaking down the silos and connecting with finance and our assets management, how are we, have we started that? Do we have plans for that? What is the goal with that?
Yeah, I think I'll start, and then if Sarah and Val want to add, and then we'll see how much Val has to say at the end. So a huge part of this process for us, one of the things that we learned administratively is how much better we can do, and I think are on the path to doing in terms of having a more comprehensive and shared view and approach to asset management, and that's one of the key objectives of an asset management plan, is to marry the engineering side with the finance side, and I think we are on our way to a much better dynamic there. Did we see and observe some of the gaps that existed there in the past? Absolutely, but we, I think, are now in a position to, I don't want to say eliminate, because there's always some measure of, different perspectives, and that's healthy, but we want to mitigate those sticky points that make it hard for our organization to deal with this, because we must have a shared approach. And I think this is partly what Chris was getting at when we talk about, it's not just about communicating this externally to the public, but internally. If we don't have a shared belief in asset management, you can have the best plan in the world, but implementation becomes challenging, and you can have breakdowns in other ways. And so we want to have an administrative approach that mitigates and eliminates as much as possible those things that stop a good asset management plan from being a part of what we do as an organization. Sarah?
With the marrying of the financial and the actual assets together, we did TCA, tangible capital assets, back in 2010, I think was when we had to bring that in. Going through the assets for the asset management plan, there are some that we had missed, there are some that were different than we thought, so that there are two very separate databases at this time. We will look at marrying them together. There will be an impact on the financial statements, because of the, part of our accumulated surplus is the value of our capital assets as part of that. So there may be a shift in that as well. But our plan is to eventually have them married together, so that we're working from that, both of us are looking at that same database. At the moment they are separate, so it definitely is on the cards to look at that.
All right.
Can I do a follow-up
Sure.
to that? So then would we be expecting to see, when budgets are presented to us from the other departments, that we'll be seeing that? So when you're coming to us with capital costs, we'll be seeing the asset management to see the reasoning behind.
Yeah, so absolutely, it's anticipated that the asset management plan will play a key role in administration's recommendations. It's one of a number of elements that will be a part of that, but it absolutely, the intent of it is to make council's review of those situations more evidence and data driven, and it certainly makes administration's life a little bit easier when we have the shared medium of the asset management plan, whereby we can discuss that. And if I may just add one more thing to your previous question, was we don't want the asset management plan being viewed as an engineering document or as a finance document. It's a comprehensive review of those things. And so Chris may wish to comment on this. That's one of the challenges I've, in talking with colleagues, is finding asset management the right home inside an organization is challenging. If you give it to the engineering department and then the engineers just completely take it over and try and leverage it as a engineering piece, it can get off track. And same if you leave it with finance, it becomes just driven completely by financial principles, and either of those is risky. And so one of our objectives is to ensure that we keep this as a higher order document that is touched by more than just one element of our organization, and those are the two critical ones, but operations also I think has a really key role to play in this as well. But Chris, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I think that was well said.
Thank you.
I'll just give a little comment here. I did go through asset management planning before when I worked for the province, and I was quite surprised a year and a half ago when I was elected that we didn't have this kind of a plan for the town. So I'm ecstatic that we have this now, and I think it's truly a new era for the town management to have this as our base. And I look forward to including a lot of these metrics in our performance indicators and tying the performance of the town straight to these a lot of these asset indicators. My question is to you. I know the administration is going to come to us with a recommendation, but from a sort of a rule of thumb or what's common in the industry, do towns usually, we've indicated that assets or assessment of quality is something we have to tackle right away on these unassessed assets. Do towns generally go focus their assessments on the red assets, or do they focus on an entire category of assets? So do generally they go out and assess like all the sanitary water lines, or do they just go out and assess red areas because they know they're coming up right away? Yeah,
and it's different for every municipality. There's a lot of factors that kind of revolve around how they're going to tackle this. Geographic location plays a big part in it. Some municipalities have multiple different soil types, so understanding the soil types also indicates whether that's corrosive to metal pipes and so on. The way to tackle an assessment, if you know there's hot spots within your infrastructure, water main breaks are prevalent in one area of town. You may want to look at getting some analysis done on some of those pipes. When it comes to sanitary and storm, CCTV inspections, maybe you have stormwater backups on a regular basis in a certain area of town. That might be an area of concern to say, well, we should get in there and see what's going on under there, CCTV inspections. Obviously, there's not enough money to undertake assessments for every piece of infrastructure. But I think identifying where your hotspots are is first and foremost. And then from there, implement a scheduled program where, okay, maybe this year we'll tackle 25%, next year we'll tackle another 25%. But definitely look at, if you have some professional knowledge of areas of town that may be susceptible to deterioration or infrastructure damage, definitely target those first. And I hope that helps clarify. It's hard to come up with an individual plan that works for every municipality. There's so many factors involved.
So just to summarize then, to tackle hotspots rather than whole asset groups. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would definitely say tackle those areas that are defined as hotspots within your infrastructure.
Just one other addition to that would be that it's complex in the sense that you really need to take into account the mixture of asset condition, because whether multiple assets are degraded in a certain area or one critical one, really can change your approach. And it depends whether there's surface infrastructure, below ground infrastructure, and the vulnerability. So for instance, I might take a different view of a poor water main in a residential area by comparison to a poor water main servicing a hospital, for example.
Councilor Schneider?
After hearing everything, just to follow up, and one of them was actually Councilor Wilkinson had a comment, and I'm glad you brought it up. This is something that council and the town administration we've been dealing at since 2010. So that's why we've been very aggressive putting in our budgets. And the value of AUMA, and I think they got away from it, but when this asset management came out, there was a lot of courses that you could take at AUMA that were about asset management. So that's information, so that's sort of a value that we as councillors, when we attend AUMA, I'd encourage you, because I've sat in on a lot of them, and there's a lot of valuable information.
Yeah. And there has been there's much more resources available now than there was 5 years ago.
Exactly.
Because asset management, municipal asset management is becoming something mainstream. municipalities are seeing, identifying the need to undertake asset management, and there's there's much more material and resources available, webinars and so on. The provincial governments have webinars and information on asset management. I think the federal government also has some information and material resources for asset management, and many other bodies like the IAM, the IIMM, which is an International Infrastructure Maintenance Manual. IAM is the Institute of Asset Management. Sorry, all these acronyms. But there's many more. Asset Management BC has a very good framework as well. It's not specific to one province or body. There's good information everywhere.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I should have said thank you to the ladies also. It's a lot of hard work.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And on that, I think I'll slip out. I have a flight to catch in Edmonton.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have draft procedural bylaw number 2230.
Thank you. Administration doesn't have anything to add other than what is noted in the report before you. Based on the conversation we had previously, there was a few adjustments made, and now present that again for council's consideration and feedback.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Student administration, and the changes are in red, is that true? Is that the way I'm seeing it?
That's correct.
Okay.
And if I may be clear, these are, if you'll remember, the original bylaw was almost completely changed, and so these are changes from the previously proposed bylaw, not from the original or existing bylaw.
Okay, with that in mind, can I ask the question? Somewhere in here, it sort of seemed to me like a council member now can't bring a motion onto the floor. Is that true? You know, I think that's something we've always lacked, that no one did come and bring a motion onto the floor, but I always felt we had the right to do that. Is that taking that right away?
Are you if I may, through the chair, are you referring to the notice of motion?
Yes.
No,
Mhm.
that is included here, and that ability is being given to council, a
Okay.
formal method by which they can do that.
Okay, all right, good. That's the other way.
Looks like section 8.
Right.
Yeah, it's a completely new section that we did not have before.
That's right.
Okay. Okay, thank
Councillor
you.
Schneider?
On here would be page 4 of 21, is we're just questioning where they're changing to reduce the number of council and committee whole meetings during July, August, and September. Are we thinking of changing that and reducing? I just see it's crazed in red. Which direction are we going?
If I may.
Yeah,
I asked
go
for
ahead.
this deletion last time because it was my recommendation we delete it because we can change frequencies to any frequency we want during any month. So there wasn't really, there wasn't a need for that clause to be in there. Does that make sense? We can still reduce frequency during the summer. It's just
Right.
we didn't need to be told that we were allowed to do it.
Right, I was just questioning it because there was something there, because primarily during July and August, everyone shuts down summer holidays and stuff, so I'm wondering why we're even playing with those numbers, because Christmas time would be because of the season, and then those 3 months, it would just be common practice, and I agree at the organizational meeting, we can set it, because with that said, it's easy to remove a meeting than to plan one. So if we did a plan, okay, there's 4 per month, July, August, December, whenever need be FCM. So I'm just wondering why we're deleting it.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Yeah, I'd have to speak in favor of that too, because I think July and August traditionally, that's when kids go to school, people go on holidays, do different things, so.
So the
Again, traditionally, we have not had our full contingent of meetings then, because who comes to it? They're all gone on holidays.
I'll just speak to it again one more time.
Carry on.
So the way it was
I
worded
know.
was we may consider the following changes. And so my point was that we can change our dates whenever we feel like. We don't need to be told when we may be able to do it. So by leaving it in there, it seemed repetitive to me because we can change the dates and times of our meetings whenever we want, and I
You have
still
a point. I just don't mind it.
Certainly, the ability remains for council to adjust their schedule at your discretion as a body.
Mayor Zara.
And I think everybody on council would agree that we would prefer meeting less than more, and we will always try to do that. Unfortunately, we haven't had the ability because we've been busy, but I think we're just splitting hairs if we leave it in. And don't
Take
leave
it out,
in.
yeah, I mean, either
It
way.
really doesn't mean anything in there, other than saying, yeah, you may do this, so.
Any other comments? Councillor Schnard.
Okay, unless someone's on. Just on item 6, agenda 6.2, submit to, inclusive, the agenda shall be delivered to CEO or his or her delegate 4 full days before, or the end of the 5th day prior to the meeting. So I agree, I'm pleased that we are putting it, because before we had no guidelines, but then it still leave us open, so let's say by Monday, something pressing comes up that we want brought forward, and we have the ability as a councillor to bring in something I'd like to see on the council, and of course deliver it in a proper manner, because like I'm saying, we give time, but I would like to.
I can speak to that.
Okay, go ahead.
So if it's not within the four full days, it certainly can be added at the discretion of myself or the mayor or the CAO if it is pertinent and if it's urgent.
Okay.
We've done that before. Otherwise, it would be brought forward at a future council meeting.
If I may just add to that, the mayor is correct in that. What happens then is council votes on the agenda, and if they don't want to add the sundry or additional item, then at council's discretion, they can decline that option. If you have something to add to that, Caleb.
It's just covered under the section right below it, section 6.3, sundry item.
Okay, I was just clarifying why we were taking that out, but I am pleased with the guidelines. Okay. That's it for me. Thank you.
Anything else? Any other comments or questions? I think that personally, I think the change to 9.9 on sort of clarifying the public hearing and the length of it and how to extend it, I agree with this deletion because it's just following regular council rules or council times and extensions. No other comments or questions? Do you feel you have enough to move forward?
Yeah, council can expect to see this then at a regular council meeting for consideration in the near future.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. No other reports, no information on no sundry items. Do we have questions from media and public?
I don't have any questions.
No? And there's no public.
You always take it so easy on us.
All right, can I have a motion to move into a closed session in accordance with section 24A, C, and G of the FOIP Act? Councillor Baer makes that motion. Was there still a second? Are we still or is there 2 items in that or
For the closed session?
Yeah.
No, just have the one.
okay. Okay, all in favor?
Okay, are we live?
All right, can I have a motion that the meeting be adjourned, please?
I can do that.
Councillor Chenard, non-debatable, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.